giving you updates from the world of business in about 25 minutes. That's what we're here to do on Business Incorporated. And here's what we have prepared for you. Mali has imposed a $10,000 visa bond on U.S. visitors. Tunisia's trade deficit widens by 24% in the first 9 months of this year. And Zimbabwe is set to transition to new trading systems. You're welcome to the program. I'm Ini John Mekwan. We start as usual from the global oil space. Prices rose this afternoon after hitting 5-month lows in the previous session. Investors are focusing on potential talks between the president of the United States and China that could ease trade tensions between the two biggest economies. So we see the numbers this morning. More than 1.5% for Brent in the green, $63.69 a barrel. WTI is also up almost $60, but still around 59.91, up 1.73. Of course, we know there was a bit of a reversal there as we saw WTI really react to President Trump's new threat of 100% tariff on China imports. And so that talks perhaps could quell some of the tensions that we have around the sell-off in market look to be capped by Washington and Beijing's willingness at least to negotiate. And so we'll follow up on the talks and see what happens at the end of the negotiation. And still around the oil and gas space, Uganda's long-awaited oil refinery project is expected to begin operations by early 2030, marking a major step toward the country's goal of processing its crude oil domestically. According to the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, construction work on the 60,000 barrel per day refinery on Hoima district is progressing as part of Uganda's broader oil development plan, which includes the East African crude oil pipeline and upstream production facilities. The refinery, a joint venture between the Ugandan government and international partners, is designed to produce fuels such as petrol, diesel, aviation fuel, and kerosene for both local consumption as well as exports. Let's see what's happening with metals this time. Of course, we had that news earlier today that gold did hit a new high above $4,000. Let's see what it's looking like this afternoon, and it's scaled to another record high today. Investors rev up their safe haven bets after U.S. President Donald Trump renewed tariff threats on China, while expectations of U.S. interest rate got added to the metals low. So we see spot gold is up 1.4% to $4,074.02. U.S. gold is up 2.3% at $4,093.50. And spot silver 2.2% in the green, $51.37. Platinum is 3.3% in the green, $1,639.50. Palladium up almost 3% in one trading session, $1,444.48 a barrel. And Goldman Sachs has said that silver prices were expected to rise in the medium term due to private investment flows, but warned of heightened near-term volatility and downside risks compared to gold. On technical basis, gold's and silver's relative strength index stands at 80 and 83, respectively, indicating the metals are overbought. Fed Chair Jerome Powell has a chance to offer his guidance on monetary policy when he speaks later on tomorrow. And talking about gold, we spoke to an analyst in South Africa saying that more countries, more central banks are accumulating gold in their reserves. And we hear the perspective of what they're doing with gold, adding to the prices here in South Africa.
These levels, when it comes to the gold price, one will wish that it was those days, when we know that South Africa was a major producer when it comes to gold itself. But anyway, we're still producing a decent amount of gold. And gold, just like other commodities, they continue to be our most important earnings when it comes to foreign earnings that we come to get into the country. But yes, the positive thing is that since the JSE itself doesn't have exposure to AI, which has been the one that has been driving markets, the way they have been doing, but the likes of gold have managed to have the local boss, that is the JSE, to continue to reach record highs. And also when it comes to our reserves, we know that gold continues to be a very critical part when it comes to the reserves held by our Reserve Bank, and that itself increases our reserves as well. So those positives bode well for us, and as well, since the rand itself happens to be a commodity currency, then that is why we continue to see the rand standing tall versus other currencies, the likes of the dollar as well. So that's also a positive for us, and bearing in mind that as a country, we are a net importer, so a firmer currency will bode well for us, because that means that we are not importing inflation to our shores. Because if that was not the case, then it will mean the interest rate cuts that we've been getting now recently were going to come to an end. So a firmer gold price have the positive benefits for the country. Unfortunately, we are not taking the real advantage of the higher commodity price. That is when it comes to the yellow metal, because the producers, the miners, the investors, they continue to complain that given some of the red tapes that we have in the country, given some of the policies that we have in the country, we are not taking full advantage of higher or firmer commodity prices. But yes, there is some good positives.
Away from gold now, in Mali, that country has introduced a new visa policy requiring U.S. nationals to post a bond of up to $10,000 when applying for business or tourist visas. The move announced by Malian authorities is a reciprocal response to a similar measure imposed by the U.S. under the Trump administration, which requires certain foreign nationals, including Malians, to provide a refundable bond as part of visa applications. Under the new rule, U.S. travelers may be required to pay varying bond amounts depending on the visa category and length of stay. Officials say that the policy aims to ensure fair and equal treatment of its citizens in international travel procedures. And then in Tunisia, trade deficit widened by 24% in the first 9 months of 2025, driven by a surge in imports that outpaced exports growth. According to data from the National Institute of Statistics, the country recorded a deficit of $18.2 billion, up from $14.7 billion during the same period in 2024. The rise was attributed mainly to higher imports of energy products, machinery, and food items. Meanwhile, exports dominated by agricultural products, textiles, and electrical components rose modestly but failed to offset the growing imports bill. In Ghana, West Africa, it has become Vietnam's largest rice buyer in September, accounting for nearly 22% of total exports after the Philippines temporarily suspended imports. Vietnam exported 6.83 million tons of rice in the first 9 months, earning $3.49 billion, down about 2% in volume and 19.98% in value year on year. In September alone, the country shipped 466,800 tons of rice worth over $232.38 million, down sharply by 43.27% in volume and 54.73% in value compared to the same period last year. Following Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Malaysia were the second and third largest importers of Vietnamese rice, with market shares of over 21% and nearly 10%, respectively. Let's go to Zimbabwe now, where the stock exchange holdings says that it will be migrating to a new automated trading system and central securities depository system on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, with effects from November 10, 2025. According to a statement from the exchange, the upgrade will modernize trading operations, improve transaction speed, and align with the ZSE with global technology standards. The transition is expected to strengthen integration with other regional exchanges and support digital trading innovations. The chief of the exchange, Justin Goni, says that the new system will provide a more robust and secure trading environment, offering better access for both institutional and retail investors. We're still crocodile farming industry is now generating an average of $36 million in export earnings, with production reaching 80,000 skins annually. The crocodile skin exports have increased from $32 million over the last 24 months, marking a $4 million growth. And this was said by the Lands, Agriculture, Fisheries, Water and Rural Development Deputy Minister, Davis Marapira. But still in Zimbabwe, social media users have expressed contrasting views on the conduct of Chinese nationals operating in Zimbabwe following reports of some who were allegedly involved in shooting of mine workers in Mutoko. Posting on X, US user Snowball and others are asking the public to respect the presumption of innocence, stating that accused should only be judged in a court of law. With other cautions against generalizing the actions of a few individuals to an entire community. A lot still happening in Zimbabwe, and some companies there have been forced to start importing timber to bridge a critical supply gap that has been widening for the past 2 decades. A situation the industry fears is only the beginning of a much larger crisis, they say. The chairman of the Zimbabwe Timber Federation, Mr. Darlington Dua, confirmed the development and says that the shortages stem from a disastrous combination of destructive yield fires and a massive shift from forestry to agricultural land use, as well as overcutting of companies without adequate corresponding replanting. The country's timber reserves, primarily located in the East Highlands, have been severely depleted over the last 20 years. Large swaths of commercial and indigenous forest land have been ravaged by uncontrolled fires, which have become more frequent and intense, consuming timber stock. Let's get away from Zimbabwe now. We head to Kenya, where there are calls to expand Sharia-compliant trade in key sectors such as the SMEs, tourism, and real estate. Dominated discussions at second Sharia Compliance and Halal Business Expo for 2025 that held in Nairobi. The CEO of the Sharia Compliance and Halal Business Expo said that the platform continues to foster regional partnerships and promote integrity-driven enterprises. We head to north of Africa now, Egypt. The prime minister there is affirming that the renewable energy sector is receiving significant attention from the state due to its vital role in ensuring the availability and accessibility of electric power to meet developmental and consumption needs. Chairing a meeting to follow up on the implementation progress of renewable energy projects, he expresses the government's continuous effort to provide further incentives and facilitations for that sector. Let's see what's going on in the markets now. So earlier today, during business morning, we saw recovery in Nigerian stock market. That was a slight one, but we saw that we hit the new level, 147,000 from 146 that the market opened with. Well, it seems that the market did sustain that positive sentiment by intraday. It's up 0.08%, and we're still building on the 147,000 level. So names like Seplat, Dangote Cement, they're trading above their opening prices. MTN Nigeria, WAPCO are actually on the side. That's profit taking happening to that one. So mostly at the close of trade today, we hear Dangote Cement maybe as a major market driver, but we see the market in green at this time. For Johannesburg, it's also positive, up 0.41% at 110,476. In Egypt, it's also positive at intraday, 0.27% in the green, while Nairobi closed Friday in the red, 0.67%. Moving on to the Middle East, now we see a mixture of colors, equally mixed because Dubai is in the red, 0.68%. Abu Dhabi is also in the red at intraday, but Saudi and Qatar are in the green. We see Saudi at 0.62% are positive, while Qatar is 0.16% in the positive. And then we just head straight to the United States. Stock futures rose, slightly rebounding from Friday's sell-off. So we see a green, very green, almost 1% up for the Dow Jones, more than 1% for the S&P, and NASDAQ almost 2%, 1.91% is what we see right there for the US market. And in Asia, market fell after China and the US, the talks, of course. We don't know which way it's going to come to, but we see the threats there to investors' sentiment. So it's Nikkei is in the red, Kospi in the red, Hang Seng in the red. Look at the other two markets in that region also in the red. The uncertainty, of course, around the talks between the new tariff threats from President Donald Trump and the talks that they should be having by now is also driving the markets. Let's swing over to Europe now and see how the investors are doing this afternoon. And we have Lars Holt. Lars, good afternoon. What are investors doing, or which way are they going at this time? We know that eyes are on the proposed talks between the US and China.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ini. Of course, these trade talks here, this latest escalation is the big talk here as well. But I got to tell you, we did have a good market start here into the week because we already had drastic losses last Friday when the escalation initially happened. Stocks here way down all across Europe. And now over the weekend, of course, things have cooled down a little, and we're seeing that recovery in the DAX, it was about 0.5% up for most of the day. Now it's about 1/3%. The FTSE 100 in London as well, and the CAC 40 in Paris are also trading up. Now looking at some business headlines, though, they're actually not too good, Ini. Inflation in the EU is ticking up a bit more than expected, and the number of bankruptcies is also up. So it's hard to see these gains today as fundamentally strong.
So let's leave the market for a bit. And the talks of wealth inequality seems is everywhere in the world, and I think there's a latest report on that.
Yes, Ini, as we have seen for many, many years, the rich are getting richer, and they're getting richer now at a faster pace, according to this very latest report that is out by Oxfam. Let me give you some numbers. Currently, there's 487 billionaires in Europe, and that is 39 more than last year. That means that just about every 9 days, a new name joins that list of billionaires. Also, to give the perspective from right here in Berlin, Germany has the 4th highest number of billionaires in the world after the US, China, and India. So there will be 130 people here with a combined wealth of 625 billion euros. And now one might wonder, where is all that money coming from? That's interesting, because if we look at, say, the United States, most billionaires are so rich there because they started mega successful companies. Think Elon Musk at Tesla, or Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook, Meta, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison. However, in Germany specifically, only around 1/3 of billionaires have even made their money themselves. A full 71% are the heirs to fortunes. That would be the descendants of the founders of BMW and Porsche and Volkswagen and some of the big retailers. Now, their wealth has been growing at a fast clip for years, while the same can obviously not be said at all for the general public. And so the sad but not surprising result is inequality is on the rise in Germany, in Europe, just as it is around the world.
Yeah, well, I thought it was just an African thing, but I think, last, we need to struggle harder to make our way to that list. So that the world can also talk about us. But any recommendations on bridging this, widening gap?
Yeah, there are clearly some ideas out there. The most simple one has often been discussed: higher taxes for the super rich. And now, once again, looking specifically at Germany, the topic actually popped up just last week when the left party in parliament suggested once again to raise taxes on the wealthy. However, both an inheritance tax and a wealth tax seem to be non-starters for the Conservative Party currently leading the governing coalition. Now, that's too bad, especially because Germany used to have wealth tax. And if that was just reinstated the way it used to be, it would bring in over 100 billion euros just like that. And only a few people would be paying it. And it would be the ones who could most easily afford it. Anyway, that tax doesn't currently exist. And another tricky aspect, of course, is that for many billionaires, large parts of their wealth is also not in liquid assets, but it's tied to companies. So that would be a problem, of course, for legislators making up new tax laws. An example, there are startups worth billions, even though they might be losing money. You can't easily just tax them or their owners at a fair level because that would make starting companies here cost prohibitive. So there is no simple solution, but Oxfam says, and according to many surveys, most people agree the rich have to be taxed more, and it should most likely be happening not on a national level either, but it should probably be dealt with by the EU, not least as to prevent billionaires just from moving their assets across the nearest border.
Yeah, I wonder if this problem can ever be solved. It's a long-standing conversation, and yet, the rich keeps getting richer and the poor getting poorer. But thank you so much for bringing us up to date on that report, Lars.
Yeah, thank you, Ini.
Let's switch over to the crypto space and see what the color is. That the color is better than what we had on Friday. We had a red Friday, but today there's been a recovery, and the Bitcoin is almost 115,000 a level. It's gained more than 2% at this time in 24 hours. Ethereum is looking threatened, or the $4,000 level is looking threatened right here, 4,130.28. But it's gained more than 7% in 24 hours. X&P in green. So it's just a reversal of mostly what we had on Friday, Cardano and TRX and all of that. Let's see the stories making the headlines in the crypto space. We start from here in Africa, where Kenya is embracing stable coins for faster global trade. And I remember, I think, was it Thursday or Friday, we did note that stablecoin is really gaining grounds around the world. Even here in Nigeria, we hear even some businesses are using stablecoin for trade, global trade, international trade, and Kenya is also following that now. They continue to position themselves as one of Africa's leading innovation hubs, and experts say that the adoption of digital currency, particularly stable coins, is rapidly transforming how individuals and businesses transact across the border there in Kenya. So they're looking to integrate stablecoins into their financial ecosystem. And it's also heartwarming to see that CBN Governor, Mr. Cardoso, had said that our own central bank is also looking that way to formalize stablecoins into our financial ecosystem. And we hope that will be done fast so that we're not losing out. There's also the story that crypto funding rates have fallen to their lowest level since FTX-driven bear market of 2022, and that signals cooling momentum across leveraged markets. So crypto funding rates dipped to the lowest level since 2022, and according to data from CoinGlass, both Bitcoin and Ethereum perpetual futures have seen sharp declines in funding rates as traders scale back bullish bets amid market consolidation. They said the dip reflects growing caution following weeks of volatility, which we saw a whole lot last week, that volatility and profit taking, though some view it as a potential setup for the next major price rebound once sentiment stabilizes. And then in India, there's an investigation going on in India. They're investigating 400 Binance traders for $42 million in crypto tax evasion. India's tax authority have launched that sweeping investigation. There are 400 wealthy cryptocurrency traders suspected of hiding their assets on Binance to evade taxes. The traders allegedly failed to disclose gains from digital asset trading between 2022 and 2025, amounting to about $42 million in unpaid taxes. I guess that's one of the reasons why the rich are getting richer and they cannot be taxed, because there are always ways to hide some of this profit. But these are the top headlines from the crypto space at this time, and that's it on Business Incorporated today, Monday. It's a new week, it's a fresh start, so that means we still have a whole lot to go. Please do stick here on Channels Television and we'll keep you updated. I'm John Mekwa. Bye-bye.